Have you ever stared at a wall of expensive garden fertilizers and felt completely overwhelmed? You buy the special tomato food, the magic cucumber powder, and the premium fruit tree booster, but your harvest still ends up looking sad and your back aches from all the heavy lifting. What if I told you that the gardening industry is making things needlessly complicated just to sell you more plastic bottles? Today, we are going to uncover the one absolute main rule when it comes to choosing fertilizers. It is a secret that transforms exhausted weekend warriors into relaxed, smart gardeners who harvest 3 times as much food with a fraction of the effort. We are going to flip everything you thought you knew about feeding plants right on its head. Get ready, because by the end of this video, you will never look at your vegetable beds or fruit trees the same way again. But first, let us talk about a massive myth that is secretly destroying your soil. To truly grasp the main rule of fertilizing, we need to step back in time. For thousands of years, forests and wild meadows have produced massive amounts of lush, green growth and abundant fruits without a single human buying a bag of synthetic chemicals. Mother Nature has always run a closed-loop system. Leaves fall, animals leave behind waste, and an invisible army of underground microbes goes to work. This microscopic workforce breaks down the organic matter and feeds it directly to the roots of the plants. Fast forward to the 20th century, and humans invented synthetic fertilizers. We figured out how to isolate the basic chemical elements plants need and pump them directly into the soil. Suddenly, farming became all about injecting fast food into the dirt. While this created quick results, it completely bypassed the natural biological system. The soil became lazy, the beneficial bugs died off, and gardeners became trapped in an endless cycle of buying more chemicals to fix dead soil. Our goal, as smart, lazy gardeners, is to return to that natural system, but supercharge it for maximum food production. Let us dive straight into the biggest trap that almost every single gardener falls into at least once in their life. You walk into a garden center and you see shelves upon shelves of brightly colored bottles and bags. There is a special box for tomatoes, another specific bottle for cucumbers, and yet another magical powder for your apple trees. The marketing makes you believe that without these highly specific, expensive products, your garden is doomed to fail. You end up spending a small fortune and carrying heavy bags back to your car, convinced that you have just bought a guaranteed massive harvest. But here is the hard truth that the garden industry does not want you to know. Your plants cannot read those fancy labels. A tomato plant does not know the difference between a high-priced tomato booster and the natural nutrients breaking down in a forest. When you buy into this marketing, you are complicating your life and adding unnecessary back-breaking labor to your weekend. The lazy gardening approach is entirely different. We do not chase bottles. We chase a fundamental understanding of how nature actually works. By breaking free from the consumer trap, you save your hard-earned cash, and more importantly, you save your precious time. You will no longer spend your Saturday mornings mixing chemical cocktails in watering cans. Instead, you will learn to provide exactly what the plant needs, exactly when it needs it, using the absolute minimum amount of effort required. So, what exactly is this main rule of choosing fertilizers? Are you ready for it? The golden rule is simply this. You must match the specific nutrient to the exact growth phase of the plant, while always prioritizing the health of the soil over the immediate feeding of the roots. I know that might sound a little bit scientific, but let us break it down into plain English. Think of your plants like growing human beings. A newborn baby needs entirely different food compared to a teenage athlete or an elderly person. Your plants go through distinct phases of life. They have a baby phase where they are just growing leaves. They have a teenage phase where they are building strong bones or roots. And they have an adult phase where their only job is to produce babies, which are the fruits and vegetables we want to eat. If you give a plant the wrong food at the wrong time, it is like feeding a newborn baby a giant steak. It will not work, and it might even cause harm. The lazy gardener does not guess. The lazy gardener looks at the plant, identifies its current life stage, and provides the one specific nutrient it needs right at that very moment. This simple shift in thinking eliminates 90% of your fertilizer mistakes instantly. To master this rule, you only need to understand 3 magic letters. If you look at any fertilizer package, you will see 3 numbers separated by dashes, representing nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. We call this the NPK ratio. Let us talk about the first letter, which is nitrogen. Nitrogen is the engine of leafy green growth. Imagine nitrogen as the fuel that pushes a car forward. When your seeds sprout in the spring, or when your fruit trees first wake up from winter dormancy, they need to build their solar panels. Those solar panels are the leaves. Nitrogen tells the plant to shoot up towards the sky and produce thick, lush green foliage. If you are growing crops where you only eat the leaves, like lettuce, cabbage, or spinach, nitrogen is your absolute best friend. However, if you give too much nitrogen to a tomato plant in the middle of summer, you are making a massive mistake. The plant will say, "Thank you very much," and it will grow 10 feet tall with a million giant green leaves. But you will search high and low and find absolutely 0 tomatoes. It will put all its energy into leaves and forget how to reproduce. Understanding when to stop using nitrogen is the secret to getting fruits instead of an uncontrollable green jungle. Now we move to the second magic letter, which is phosphorus. Think of phosphorus as the foundation of a house and the spark that starts the reproductive engine. Phosphorus is all about what happens underground and what happens right before a flower opens. When you first transplant your delicate little vegetable seedlings into your raised beds, they are in shock. They need to establish a massive, powerful root system to survive the upcoming summer heat. Phosphorus tells the plant to dig deep and build strong roots. But its job does not stop there. When it is time for your apple trees or your peppers to start producing fruit, they first need to create blossoms. Phosphorus is the key ingredient that signals the plant to push out healthy, vibrant flowers. No flowers means no fruit, period. Many frustrated gardeners wonder why their bushes look perfectly green but never yield any berries. 9 times out of 10, they are lacking phosphorus at the critical moment of blossom development. By ensuring phosphorus is available in the early stages of planting and right before flowering, you are guaranteeing a solid foundation. You are setting up an invisible underground highway that will effortlessly pump water and nutrients up to your future harvest. The final piece of our 3-part puzzle is potassium. If nitrogen is the leaves and phosphorus is the roots, then potassium is the immune system and the final quality control manager of your fruit. Potassium is what makes your tomatoes taste incredibly sweet. It is what makes your apples crisp and your pumpkins grow to massive sizes. But beyond just making food taste good, potassium is the bodyguard of your garden. It regulates the opening and closing of tiny pores on the plant leaves, helping them hold on to water during severe droughts. It builds strong cell walls, making it much harder for biting insects and fungal diseases to attack your precious crops. When a lazy gardener wants to ensure their plants can survive a brutal summer without needing to be watered every single day, they make sure the potassium levels are high. When you see the tiny green fruits starting to form on your branches or vines, that is your signal. That is the exact moment when the plant demands a surge of potassium to swell those fruits up and protect them until harvest. If you ignore potassium, your fruits will remain small, they will lack flavor, and your plants will be the first to die when the weather turns harsh or pests invade your yard. Now that you understand the 3 main building blocks, we have to tackle an incredibly dangerous myth. It is the human instinct that says, if a little bit is good, then a lot must be fantastic. This is the fastest way to murder your garden. Synthetic fertilizers are essentially highly concentrated mineral salts. Imagine eating a massive handful of table salt. You would be desperately thirsty, and your stomach would be in agony. When you dump massive piles of fertilizer around the base of your plants, you are doing the exact same thing to their delicate roots. This is called fertilizer burn. The high concentration of salts actually sucks the moisture right out of the plant roots, turning the leaves brown and crispy. I have seen overeager gardeners accidentally kill entire rows of expensive fruit trees because they thought they were giving them a generous meal. The lazy and smart approach is always less is more. It is always better to slightly underfeed your garden than to overfeed it. You can always add a tiny bit more later, but once you have poisoned the soil with toxic levels of synthetic salts, it takes years of hard labor and heavy watering to flush it out. Restraint is the true mark of a master gardener. This brings us to a crucial distinction between the types of food we offer our gardens. We need to talk about synthetic fertilizers versus organic fertilizers. I like to compare synthetic fertilizers to an energy drink. When you drink an energy drink, the sugar hits your bloodstream instantly. You feel a massive rush of energy, you run around for an hour, and then you completely crash, feeling worse than you did before. Synthetic fertilizers work exactly the same way. They are water-soluble, meaning the plant absorbs them immediately. You will see a magical burst of green growth within just a few days. But there is a dark side to this miracle. Because they dissolve so easily, the first heavy rainstorm will wash all those expensive chemicals right past the root zone and down into the groundwater. You are literally flushing your money down the drain. Even worse, these chemical salts are harsh. They slowly kill off the earthworms and the microscopic life in your soil. Your garden becomes totally dependent on you constantly coming back with more synthetic bottles, much like an addiction. This is the exact opposite of our lazy gardening philosophy. We want to do the work once and walk away. On the other hand, organic fertilizers are like eating a bowl of slow-cooked oatmeal. They do not give you a sudden crazy burst of energy. Instead, they provide a steady, sustained release of fuel over many hours. Organic fertilizers, like bone meal, blood meal, or composted manure, are made of complex natural materials. When you put them in your soil, the plant roots actually cannot eat them right away. The nutrients are locked up tight. This might sound like a bad thing, but it is actually nature's brilliant design. Because the nutrients are locked up, they do not wash away when it rains. They stay exactly where you put them. They wait patiently in the soil. This means you do not have to constantly reapply them every 2 weeks. You can apply organic fertilizers once at the beginning of the season, and they will slowly feed your plants for months. This is the ultimate dream for the homesteader who wants a massive yield but does not want to spend every single evening mixing up batches of liquid feed. By choosing slow-release organics, you are putting your garden on autopilot. You are letting nature do the heavy lifting while you sit back in a chair and watch your food grow. But how do those locked-up organic nutrients eventually get into the plant? This is where the magic really happens, and it is the core philosophy of the lazy gardener. We do not actually feed our plants. We feed the soil biology. Beneath the surface of your raised beds is an entire universe of microscopic creatures. There are billions of bacteria and miles of fungal threads in just one handful of healthy dirt. These microbes are your unpaid, highly efficient farm workers. Their entire job is to eat the organic fertilizer you put down, digest it, and excrete it in a form that the plant roots can instantly absorb. It gets even crazier. The plants actually communicate with these microbes. If a tomato plant needs phosphorus, it will release sugary sap from its roots to attract the specific bacteria that mine phosphorus from the soil. It is an amazing underground trade agreement. When you use harsh chemicals, you kill your workforce. When you use natural organic matter, you multiply your workforce. If you focus solely on keeping these microbes happy, they will completely take over the job of feeding your plants. Your only task is to give the microbes organic matter, and they will handle all the complex chemistry and delivery systems. If feeding the soil biology is the ultimate goal, then there is one supreme, undisputed king of all fertilizers. It costs absolutely nothing, and you can make it yourself right in your backyard. I am talking, of course, about compost. Black gold. Compost is not just a fertilizer. It is a living, breathing ecosystem packed with every single nutrient your plants could ever desire, plus billions of those beneficial microbes we just talked about. Making compost is the ultimate lazy hack. You simply throw your kitchen scraps, grass clippings, and autumn leaves into a pile and let time do the work. When you add a thick layer of compost to your garden beds in the spring, you are doing three things at once. You are providing a perfect balance of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. You are inoculating the soil with an army of microbes. And you are improving the physical structure of the soil so it holds water like a giant sponge. If you only ever follow one piece of advice from this entire video, let it be this. Stop buying plastic bags of chemical dust and start making your own compost. A garden bed heavily amended with rich compost often needs absolutely zero additional fertilizer for the entire growing season. Let us take the lazy approach even further. What if you did not even have to build a compost pile? Enter the magic of organic mulch. Mulching is the practice of covering the bare soil around your plants with organic material like straw, wood chips, or chopped up leaves. Most people think mulch is just for stopping weeds or keeping the soil moist. While it does those jobs perfectly, it is also a fantastic, continuous, slow-release fertilizer. As the bottom layer of that mulch touches the moist earth, it begins to rot. The earthworms come up to the surface, grab tiny pieces of that rotting straw, and pull it deep down into the root zone. Over the course of a year, a thick layer of mulch will completely disappear, eaten by the soil life and transformed into pure plant food. There is a famous permaculture method called chop and drop. When you prune your non-diseased bushes, or chop down weeds before they seed, you just drop the leaves right there on the soil surface. You do not bag them up. You do not carry them away. You leave them to rot. You are returning the nutrients exactly where they came from. It is zero-effort fertilization that mimics a wild forest floor beautifully. Now, let us apply our main rule of timing to a specific example in your yard. Let us talk about fruit trees. Apples, pears, cherries, and plums have a very specific rhythm. In the early spring, right as the buds begin to swell, but before the leaves fully open, the tree wakes up very hungry. It needs a massive burst of energy to push out thousands of leaves and blossoms all at once. This is the exact moment for a balanced, organic feeding. The lazy homesteader applies a generous layer of compost and perhaps a handful of an organic granular fertilizer right at the drip line. The drip line is the imaginary circle on the ground directly under the outermost tips of the branches, because that is where the most active feeding roots are located. You do not pile fertilizer right against the tree trunk. That does nothing but rot the bark. You feed the outer perimeter in early spring, and then you walk away. Once the tree sets its fruit in the early summer, you stop feeding it nitrogen entirely. If you give a fruit tree nitrogen in late summer, it will push out tender new leaves that will absolutely freeze and die when the first winter frost hits. Timing is everything. What about the vegetable garden? Vegetables are sprinters. A tomato or a cucumber plant has to grow from a tiny seed into a massive, fruit-producing machine in just a few short months. They are incredibly heavy feeders. Here is the smart feeding schedule for heavy fruiting vegetables. When you plant them in the ground, you dig a deep hole and throw in a handful of compost or bone meal to provide that early phosphorus for strong roots. For the first month, you might give them a mild, liquid organic feed rich in nitrogen to help them build a large, sturdy frame of green leaves. But the moment you see the first yellow blossoms appear, you completely cut off the nitrogen supply. This is the critical pivot. You switch your focus entirely to potassium and phosphorus. If you keep dumping nitrogen on tomatoes in July, you will get a beautiful green bush with no food. By shifting to a potassium-rich feed when the fruit is setting, you are telling the plant to stop growing leaves and start pumping all its energy into making those tomatoes gigantic and sweet. It is all about steering the plant's energy exactly where you want it to go. As we move into late summer and early fall, the rules change again. Many beginners make the fatal error of trying to force one last harvest out of their fading plants by dumping heavy fertilizers on them in September. Do not do this. As the days get shorter and the nights get cooler, your perennial plants, like your berry bushes and your fruit trees, are preparing to go to sleep for the winter. They are pulling nutrients down out of their leaves and storing them safely in their roots. If you apply high nitrogen fertilizers in the fall, you confuse the plant. You force it to try and grow new shoots just as it is trying to shut down. These forced late shoots are incredibly weak and will suffer severe winter damage, potentially killing the entire bush. In the fall, the only things you should be applying are a thick layer of protective mulch and perhaps some slow-release rock dust or wood ash. These will slowly break down over the winter and be perfectly ready for the roots to absorb when spring finally returns. Late-season fertilizing is a waste of money and a danger to your perennial garden. A true master of the lazy garden does not follow a strict calendar for fertilizing. Instead, they learn the silent language of the plants. Your plants will tell you exactly what they are missing if you know how to look at their leaves. Visual diagnosis is a superpower. If the older, lower leaves on your plant are turning a pale, sickly yellow while the top leaves remain green, the plant is screaming for nitrogen. It is actively stealing nitrogen from its old leaves to support the new growth. If the leaves are turning a dark, unusual purple or reddish color, particularly on the undersides, it is begging for phosphorus. And if the very edges of the leaves look like they have been burned by a tiny blowtorch, turning brown and crispy, that is a classic sign of a severe potassium deficiency. By walking through your garden with a cup of coffee in the morning and simply observing the colors of the leaves, you can spot nutrient problems weeks before they destroy your harvest. You only intervene and apply specific fertilizers when the plant actually asks for help. If the leaves are a deep, even green, you leave the plant completely alone. There is one massive exception to every fertilizing rule, and it is a mistake that ruins thousands of gardens every summer. You must never, ever apply fertilizer to a plant that is severely stressed or dehydrated. Picture a marathon runner who has just collapsed at the finish line in the blazing heat. If you walk up to them and shove a massive, heavy cheeseburger into their mouth, they are going to get violently sick. They need gentle sips of water, not a heavy meal. Plants are exactly the same. During a massive heat wave or a severe drought, your plants shut down their systems just to survive. Their roots are struggling to find moisture. If you pour concentrated fertilizer into dry soil, it acts like a toxic salt. It instantly burns the remaining microscopic root hairs, effectively finishing the plant off. If you notice a plant looking yellow and wilted during a drought, your first instinct might be to feed it to save it. Stop right there. The only thing that plant needs is a deep, slow soaking of plain water. You must wait until the weather cools down and the plant has fully rehydrated and recovered before you even think about applying any sort of plant food. We also need to clarify the difference between granular and liquid fertilizers because the lazy gardener uses them very differently. Granular fertilizers look like small pebbles or powder. You scratch them into the top layer of the soil. They are generally slow-acting. They require rain and soil microbes to break them down over weeks or months. Granular organics are your base layer. You apply them rarely, usually just once or twice a season. Liquid fertilizers, on the other hand, are mixed with water and poured directly onto the roots or sprayed on the leaves. They act incredibly fast. If you spot a severe nutrient deficiency, like those yellowing lower leaves we talked about, a liquid feed will fix the problem in a matter of days. You can make an amazing free liquid fertilizer by putting a shovel full of rich compost into a bucket of water, letting it steep for a day, and watering your plants with this compost tea. The lazy strategy is simple. Rely on slow, granular feeds and mulch for 90% of your garden's diet. Keep liquid fertilizers as your emergency medicine cabinet, only bringing them out when a plant needs a rapid rescue. Let us talk about a fantastic free resource that homesteaders love but often misuse: wood ash from your fireplace or fire pit. Wood ash is an incredible source of potassium and calcium. Remember, potassium is what makes fruits large and sweet. Dusting a little bit of wood ash around your berry bushes or your root crops can yield amazing results. But there is a massive catch. Wood ash is highly alkaline. It drastically raises the pH of your soil. If you have acidic soil, this is a wonderful way to sweeten it up. However, if you dump wood ash around acid-loving plants like blueberries or rhododendrons, you will slowly kill them. Their leaves will turn yellow, and they will stop growing completely. Furthermore, if you apply wood ash at the exact same time as a nitrogen fertilizer, a chemical reaction occurs that turns the nitrogen into ammonia gas. The precious nitrogen simply floats away into the air, completely wasted. The smart rule for wood ash is to use it very lightly, only on plants that enjoy sweet soil, and to apply it at a completely different time of year than your nitrogen feeds. A light dusting in the middle of winter is usually the safest and most effective method. What if I told you that the absolute laziest way to fertilize your garden is to just plant more seeds? This is the concept of green manure, or cover cropping. When a garden bed finishes producing in the fall, most people pull out the dead plants and leave the soil bare. Bare soil is hungry soil. The rain washes away the nutrients and the weeds take over. The brilliant alternative is to immediately scatter seeds of a cover crop, like clover, field peas, or winter rye. These plants grow quickly over the cool months, acting as a living blanket that protects the soil. But here is the magic part. Plants like peas and clover have a special symbiotic relationship with bacteria. They literally pull pure nitrogen out of the air and store it in little nodules on their roots. Before you plant your main vegetables in the spring, you simply chop these cover crops down and let them rot into the earth. You have just grown your own organic, high-nitrogen fertilizer right in place, for pennies. No bags to carry, no formulas to mix. The cover crop does all the fertilizing work for you while you are sitting inside during the winter. So, to wrap all of this up into your daily routine, let us review the ultimate lazy gardener's checklist. First, ignore the flashy marketing and focus on the NPK ratio. Nitrogen for leaves, phosphorus for roots and blooms, potassium for fruit size and health. Second, switch entirely to organic, slow-release methods to feed the soil biology, not just the plant. Build a compost pile and heavily mulch your beds. Third, respect the timing. Feed in the early spring, pivot away from nitrogen when flowers appear, and let the plants sleep in the fall. Fourth, learn to read the leaves to spot deficiencies before they become disasters. And finally, never fertilize a dry, stressed-out plant. By following this single, comprehensive rule of timing and biology, you will transform your homestead. Your soil will become dark and crumbly. Earthworms will do your digging for you. Your tomato plants will groan under the weight of massive fruits, and your apple trees will yield a spectacular harvest. You will spend less money at the garden center, and you will spend far less time doing back-breaking labor. This is the true power of working with nature rather than fighting against it. The incredible truth is that the most powerful fertilizer in the world does not come in a brightly colored plastic bottle. It comes from understanding the natural rhythms of life in your garden. We have covered the massive importance of timing, the hidden power of soil microbes, and why doing less work actually produces a much bigger harvest. By shifting your mindset from feeding the plant to feeding the soil biology, you are setting yourself up for years of unstoppable garden success. It truly is a paradigm shift. You are no longer a consumer of expensive garden products. You are now the conductor of a beautiful, natural symphony. Remember, the ultimate goal of the lazy gardener is to create a self-sustaining system that practically runs itself. If you found this breakdown of the main fertilizer rule valuable, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on our smart gardening strategies. Give this video a big thumbs up to help spread this knowledge to other homesteaders who are tired of wasting their money. Now, I have a question for you. What is the biggest fertilizer disaster you have ever experienced in your own garden? Did you accidentally burn your tomatoes or feed your trees at the wrong time? Drop your stories in the comments below. Let us learn from each other's mistakes, and I will see you in the next video.